Welcome to Codex, History of Video Games. My name's Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week, we're talking about Slender. And
the 8 pages.
Yes, that game specifically, but also the whole lore of Slender Man.
Yeah,
and the many games that have followed.
We're going to delve into it a little bit. We're not going to get too into the weeds with it because we played Slender the 8 pages. The episode's mostly about Slender the 8 pages. And I say we played it because there will be later this week a Let's Play coming out. Our first one where we played it until I got scared, which was about 40 minutes.
We did not finish the game.
I did not finish it.
Got too scared.
I got too scared. So if you want to watch me jump while wearing a costume, enjoy that. So let's get into it, though, with the grime facts, because the reason I chose this, I should say, is when, I mean, you know creepypasta, Tyler? You're aware of the concept. And people probably are aware, like internet horror, like things that are created like kind of by a community, right? And Slender Man is probably one of the more famous ones. It's like Slender Man, SCP, the Backrooms, like that kind of thing. But I remember when this game came out in 2012 and watching YouTubers play it, and I feel like it was kind of one of the first big fan indie horror games that came out. And so I wanted to do this one as like kind of it wasn't certainly the first one, but it was one of the big ones that one of the first big ones that I remember. So
yeah, and there've been horror games for almost as long as games have been around. But this one is like special because I feel like there's like a period of time where like single developer indie developers like became actually viable, and so this game being built by a single person. It's a small game, but it accomplishes its goal.
It accomplishes its goal is an understatement. So let's do a little bit of a grime facts for it. So it was developed and released by Parsec Productions, which is a solo developer named Mark J. Hadley. It was released on June 26, 2012. There is a actual, like, I'm going to call it sequel or spiritual successor called Slender the 8 pages, which is, or Slender Man the Arrival. This is the 8 pages, the Arrival. And that's like an actual like game by Blue Isle Studios that was released in 2013 that you actually had to pay for. That really
you can, like buy it on Steam or whatever.
Yeah, you could buy it on Steam. It was like it became like a fleshed out version of this game. Same kind of principle, but a lot more stuff to it. And then so that's not the same game. They're different, but I wanted to mention it up top. It's a PC game. With fan-made ports. I played it on PC. I just downloaded it from the internet. Like, go to a reputable site, you can find it there and just download the game. Super easy. Number of copies sold is technically none because the game is free. It is a free game. It was freeware. Finding the download count is kind of hard to say. When I was looking at the websites that had download counters on them, though, they were in the tens of thousands. So my guess is it sold over 100,000. And by sold, I mean downloaded 100,000 copies. Probably more than that, realistically, especially at the time, because it was a very big game on YouTube. Like, that's where it really came into fruition. The genre or gameplay style, psychological horror, first-person exploration. Average time to complete is 30 minutes. That's according to howlongtobeat.com. I don't know how you beat it in 30 minutes. I guess
it must be like a successful run is 30 minutes.
Yeah, that sounds about right. A successful run's 30 minutes. There is no Metacritic score for this game because, again, it wasn't really like a published game, but it's considered very good. It's a good game. People like it. And I think it still holds up. It does its job. Tyler and I know that. It does its job.
It does, sure does.
So the gameplay for this, it puts you in control of an unnamed protagonist, and you're wandering through a dark, fog-filled forest, and you have nothing but a flashlight that Tyler and I found out is attached to a camera because you can zoom in and out like a camera.
Yeah, and it makes little camera noises when you zoom in and out.
Yeah, and your goal is simple. You have to collect 8 pages that are scattered throughout this whole woodland area. Tyler found out by looking at a strategy guide after the fact, after we had lost the final time, that there are 10 landmarks that could have pages, but you only need to collect 8. So there are some landmarks that don't have anything in them. And then as you collect the pages, there are more chances you see Slender Man and he starts to come out and show himself to you. And you know he's there because your camera gets all staticky.
If you're
And it,
looking directly at them.
yeah, and then it gets really scary and spooky,
Yeah.
and it's terrible.
So there's 10 landmarks, but 8 pages, but they're like randomly distributed. So every time you play
Yes.
it, you sort of get a different. You can't just like run from one to the next if you know where they are, because you don't always know where they are.
And Slender Man is inherently random. We'll talk about that
Yes.
when we get to like the development part of it. But he doesn't always show up in the same spot. It's very randomly generated. So the more pages you collect, the more aggressive he becomes. Your flashlight, it has your only light source, and it has a limited battery life, and you need to like balance using that. There is no music in the game, but just eerie noises and scary, spooky hums that get worse and worse as you collect more pages. I pulled tips straight from the README, so I wanted to read the README tips from the download. Okay, so this is just a bulleted list from there. The Slender Man can capture you if he gets too close. Do not look at Slender Man for too long or you will lose. The further you are, the safer it is to look. Your flashlight has a limited battery. It will not drain while it is turned off. You can also look at the Slender Man longer while it is turned off. However, having it off will make you easier to catch. Jogging or sprinting causes your stamina to drop. It recovers when walking and recovers twice as fast when standing still. Sprinting causes your maximum stamina to drop slightly. Jogging does not. And those were all the tips for the whole.
Okay, just a little bit of mechanical explanation.
Yep, that's all you had. So the plot of the game is there isn't one. There are 8 pages that you have to get, and that's the whole plot. This forest is like, I mean, there's no real motive for why you're in this forest. I think you even asked me that when we were playing. You're like, why are we here? I'm like, I don't know. Like,
yeah, I'm like, I want to know what the context is here of like, what are we doing in this forest in the first place? Because we could just turn around and walk away, you know?
So I know the Slenderman mythos is like missing children, and the Slenderman takes them. So I think it's a stretch to say, okay, you're this journalist trying to catch the Slender Man and find where all these kids went, which is why there's all the creepy drawings, because they're like kids' drawings, you know? I'm guessing that's like kind of the story, just based on it, but it doesn't explicitly say that at all to you. So this is actually from the creator, Mark Hadley. I found a really good interview. This interview is on levelsave.com, and it's still up. It's not like on Wayback Machine or anything. You can just find it. I just type in Slenderman creator interview, and this pops up. And this is what Mark Hadley had to say about the plot. Quote, "The simple explanation is that there really is no story of the game. I left out a lot of backstory with the intent of making a short horror experience rather than a full storyline. I think it's creepier to leave things up to the imagination of the players. Trying to determine why there's an abandoned truck or what the purpose is for the pillars is one of the back areas." End quote. So, and I think that's correct. You don't need a plot. It's still scary.
If you're just looking to get spooked, this is it.
This game does that for you. Yeah, it definitely is a scary, spooky game. So the pages you collect, though, they all have cryptic messages. And Tyler and I were trying to like keep track of what they were while we were playing, because they have phrases like "don't look" or "can't run." One just says like "no" a bunch of times across it. Like no,
he lied to me is one of them.
Yeah. So they're scary. I think it's like the idea is that you're like they're kids writing this down, which makes it spookier. Anytime you add children to a horror thing, it just makes it infinitely scarier. I think we can all agree on that. So they do a good job with that in this. But other things about the development history, though, and like kind of the origins of Slender Man. Like, what do you know about Slender Man, Tyler?
The only stuff that I know about Slender Man is that it is like a creepypasta, sort of like an internet phenomenon of people talking about Slender Man. I know that it's supposed to be spooky. I know that there are games, and this is my only experience with playing one of those games. As far as I know, there is lots of speculative backstory, but almost none of it is very confirmed, probably, which makes it spookier. And probably there isn't an actual backstory. Like there's no like book at Mark Hadley's house that like just has all the Slender Man lore. It's just like whatever your brain fills in is scariest. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's got so he pretty much is like goes after children and like kidnaps children. There is a specific point of when it started though, and that is in 2009 on the Something Awful forums. There was a Photoshop contest to create unsettling supernatural images, and that's where Slender Man started.
Okay.
A guy named Eric Knutson, who has the alias Victor Surge, posted the first image of Slender Man depicting a tall, faceless figure lurking in the background of photos featuring children. And so that's actually what started Slenderman. That's the origins of
Okay, like
Slenderman.
this guy's just like sort of hanging around,
Yeah, he like
being
creepily
weird and
hangs around
creepy.
children and he's like super tall. And you can find those images. I'm wondering if I should pull one up. It's kind of scary though. Like,
Do it. I think you should.
okay, let me find original Slenderman photo. Here we go. Let me find it here. So, okay, there's a lot of them. Yeah, there's a lot of them. So let me find one. That's a good one. So I'm gonna share this window right now. Okay.
Okay.
And don't you got to promise not to get scared, Tyler? Are you gonna get
Okay.
scared?
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I'm gonna get scared. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. Is like I make no guarantees. Okay, here we go. So this is the original scary Slenderman photo.
Ah,
Do you see it?
yeah.
So this is kind of where it started. Was this sort of look, and it's this Photoshop contest. I don't know if this is actually technically the first one, because there are some. Oh, this is kind of a zoomed in version. There is the other. I think the original photo looked like this. Let me open up the original photo. It's very not great as far as um the like resolution goes.
Oh,
But
and it's probably on purpose. I bet there is
yeah, but
not
I
a
mean,
high
I think
resolution
it's
version of it.
yeah, it's definitely so that's the original photo though. So it kind of is zoomed out
Oh,
more.
yeah.
Yeah, so he's like more in the background. But this is where it all started, and it was from this Photoshop contest. Kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
I kind of like we talked about this before, but I kind of like this like weird emergent gameplay kind of stuff. And I guess I'll show you all a picture of what Slenderman looks like in the game so you all can kind of see that. That's probably a good idea too. I love that we can present on here and show people
Yeah.
this kind
If
of
you're
stuff.
not watching the video,
Yeah,
you
you
should
can
be.
actually see like so this is what he looks like in the game. So not super scary, but I want you to picture the fact that this is Slenderman and then he's just like staticky filter happening while you're looking at this. It's very
Yeah.
unsettling.
Yeah.
Super scary. So
And he just
eh,
sort of stands there, doesn't really, he's not like walking towards you or.
yeah. And so from there, the Slender Man became kind of like a pop culture phenomenon, like it started growing and growing and growing. And there was like fan fiction, there's web series that came out. In fact, one of Hadley mentions in an interview that he was directly inspired by a video series on YouTube made by Marble Hornets, which I have not
Oh,
watched
yeah.
yet, but that was apparently like the big Slenderman series that inspired him to make this
Okay.
specific video game. So, and that's where we're kind of gonna go from like this Slenderman mythos. There was another thing that happened that's like real life, kind of dark, and I'm just gonna briefly touch on this because I started watching the documentary on it, and it just got way too sad, and I had to stop. There was an incident where there was a real life attempted murder with children or teenagers where they claimed that it was like the Slender Man told them to do it. It was like a weird.
Mm.
There's a documentary on it. You could just find that yourself. I started watching it. I stopped watching it because I'm like, this just seems like, in like true crime, you're like, why am I watching this? Why am I doing
You're
this to
like, this
myself?
really happened. I don't
Yeah,
like
it's like
that.
it's not interesting to me. It's just really dark and depressing, and so I kind of stopped
Yeah.
watching it. So
That's real. That lives with us on Earth.
yeah, and it was like a real attempted murder thing that happened, and they claimed these teenagers claimed Slender Man was a part of it, and it was just and they. So the documentary, what was interesting to me about the documentary and what I was trying to like get at while watching it was how this phenomenon of internet creepypasta, emergent storytelling stuff like bleeds into real life. But then the true crime stuff just got too dark and depressing for me,
Yeah.
realistically. But it's worth noting with the history of Slender Man because that was like the big thing. And I think that was in 2014 when that happened. So this is not in my notes, by the way. So if I got the date wrong, don't judge
I
me.
think that's correct. I remember hearing about that.
Yeah. So I actually have a long quote here from Mark Hadley, and I'm not going to read the whole quote, but essentially, I'm going to sum it up by saying this that Mark Hadley was completely did this as a way to learn Unity. This was his first Unity project, which is
Nice.
bonkers. That
That's how you do it. You just got to pick something and start learning.
and he just fell right into it and he stumbled into this scary horror game. So he wanted to like make a short game that would be easy to program for practice specifically. And then he hadn't like made anything scary for a long time, but he saw like the short horror games because there were games that came out at this time that were starting to come up. And he played one called SCP-087, which is also made using Unity, and that's about like SCP. And there's also SCP
What is
Containment
SCP?
Breach.
I
Oh,
don't even know what that
SCP is Secure, Control, Protect, I believe. This is a thing that we could go down the rabbit hole on. This is like one of the biggest internet community writing projects, I would say,
Okay.
around. And the idea is that there are these anomalies that the government, that the Secure, Contain, Protect organization locks away from the world. And so there's essentially a bunch of monsters.
This is like an X-Files kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of. It's kind of
like a community made X-Files.
Yeah, and the way I look at it is, the movie, and this is going to be kind of a pulling it out of nowhere, but do you know the movie Cabin in the Woods?
Yeah.
So have you seen that movie?
Yes, I have.
Okay, spoilers for this movie that came out a long time ago. The whole idea was that there's these cages where all the horrors are kept in this facility. It's kind of like that, except instead of doing it for like to feed this like Titan god thing, it's like they're containing these things to keep them out of civilization, so humans don't know about them because they're so terrifying and they're like monsters essentially. And so anyone can write up a monster and submit it to this like wiki, and if it gets accepted, great. If not, sorry. But there's like a bunch of famous ones. Like I think there's a plague doctor one that like he's like, I'm gonna heal you, but he just like tries to kill you. I don't know. It's a thing, I'm very much skipping over that part, but that's what Hadley was inspired by. So I'm gonna read the rest of this quote now. So, quote, I wanted to do something within my programming ability, which is still pretty basic. I hadn't programmed anything for 10 years. I just decided to adhere to a few simple elements that I thought could make a decent horror experience. A suspenseful buildup, the slow wandering exploration, very few details, so the imagination fills in the rest, the notes scribbled on the pages, and as a little scripting as possible. Slender Man's movement follows a few rules, but is otherwise random. Okay. So, he said the greatest difficulty was just trying to learn Unity from scratch, like that he hadn't used Unity before. And so he's doing this as practice, but it was all like how the elements fit together for him, which is why. So all the programming and gameplay is done by him, but any graphic stuff, like Hadley is fully admitting he uses a lot of default textures and free assets from the asset store in Unity, which I think in this case is fine. If you're taking those assets and making something creative and more importantly, free, like you're not trying to like flip these assets to make a quick buck, then that's exactly what these should be used for. Right.
Yeah. I don't have any problem with using assets from an asset store, especially if you're trying to just learn something. Like I've done this myself with like trying to learn Unreal stuff. It's like, I'm not an artist. I'm not here to learn Blender and how to make 3D models in Blender. So I'll just go in the marketplace and just find stuff that can help me do what I'm trying to do.
For sure. Yeah. So that's kind of what Mark did. Mark Hadley did. I say Mark like we're best buds. So
you're on a first name basis with Mark.
Yeah, me and Mark. But the cool thing about the music with this, because Hadley is a musician, like that's their strong suit. So he mostly did music, but he wanted it to be repetitive and droning. Like it's just these noises that are repetitive and droning. It's not
music is a stretch. It's ambiance.
Which is funny to me that he is a musician, but then he decided not to make music and to do these like droning sounds instead.
Yeah, I think that's better for this kind of thing because you're trying to like build suspense, and like if there were music, that sort of takes you out a little bit, I think.
For sure. I definitely agree. So, yeah, I mean, the game's release, like it kind of was a big pivotal point, I would say, for horror. And I talked briefly about it. Slender the Arrival is the more expansive game. I'm not entirely sure how much input Mark Hadley had on this.
On the Arrival?
Yeah, on the Arrival. I was looking stuff up about it, and it credits him as being a co-developer, but I don't think he joined their team necessarily. Okay. I think it was kind of just like, I did this, and then you took this idea and ran with it and sold it, and they wanted to give him credit. I don't even know if he made money off of it. I hope he does. I hope he did.
Yeah, but maybe they threw him a few bones for sort of inspiring them and allowing them to make a game that, wow, it's a very pretty game. The Arrival is much higher production value.
Yeah, it's got a production value behind it and stuff. Because I think that people saw there was a market for these games, and now we're going to put them out there. So I got one fun little trivia fact about Slender the 8 pages before we end our development section. This is a really short episode this week because It's just not, I mean, it's a small game, but the fun fact is there are no hills in Slender, the 8 pages. And this is actually a direct quote from Mark J. Hadley himself. Quote, I'd say a few elements of the woods are definitely different than intended. For one, my movement code for the Slender Man only works in 2D, so the entire forest needed to be flat, which I hope I disguised well. Ideally, some hills and rocks would have been nice, but impossible in the current version. And I
They
kind of
probably
love
did
that.
that in the next one. In Arrival probably has all
Yeah,
that.
add some verticality to it,
Mm-hmm.
when you gotta add that in there. But as far as the legacy goes, I think this left like a pretty big mark on horror for video games. And you could tell because of how many clones it kind of spawned. Like people were like inspired by, and I would say that in clone in like a good way and a bad way. Like this
Yeah,
game
yeah,
inspired a lot of good horror games that people probably play online that were also made by like passionate creators doing other internet creepy pasta kind of stories. But it also inspired a lot of blatant money grabs. It's kind of a double-edged sword, which I think you could say about any game,
yeah,
realistically. So it's a very good game, though. I would highly recommend it. I think it's still very scary, as you're about to see later on this week when I release
yeah.
us playing it. It's very spooky, scary, but yeah, it's uh, it's definitely up there with one of the scariest things I've played. And the fact that it's only 20 minutes to 30 minutes long to beat it. I think the video I watched because I wanted to know what the ending looked like, so I did watch someone play the ending, and it's just like, yeah, it becomes like daylight and everything's fine, which is
Yeah.
also kind of eerie because you're like playing it and it's the dark forest. You click the last page and then boom, it's just like daylight and everything's fine, and it's really creepy. So
Even that's creepy. Just everything
yeah,
being fine is creepy now.
everything's just unsettling because it even adds more mystery to it.
Yeah.
So I just thought it would be important to play this game. I mean, maybe I've heard of the SCP containment breach game, and I think that's actually like a first person shooter, which
Hmm.
is more up our alley, Tyler.
Yeah. Well, we could check some games out.
I just want to play. Maybe we just go back to, well, we can get into how you've been playing. I mean, that was it for the episode notes. It's pretty short today because it's a quick episode. But what you been playing, Tyler?
This week, I've been playing. Let's see, what have I been playing this week? I've been mostly just watching a lot of Batman Arkham Knight. We're almost done.
Nice.
Kelly's been playing that. In terms of like games that I'm playing, really not. I haven't made any Mario and Luigi progress. I've been reading Play Nice, the book about Blizzard that
Oh
Jason
yeah.
Schreier wrote that came out. So that's where I've been spending a lot of my what would be gaming time. So I don't really have much to talk about this week in terms of stuff I've been playing, but I know you've been playing games.
Oh, because so Tyler and I, well, I'll get to the thing that we're doing together last because I wanted to play a spooky game before I played the Slender, the 8 pages. So I actually beat Alan Wake in 1 week.
All
It was a
right.
very short game. I mean, I have one more special episode left. I beat 1 through 6 episodes, which is the game. I beat the first episode DLC called The Signal, and I have one more DLC left called The Writer. So
Mm.
I'm gonna play
There's
that
what's
DLC.
American Nightmare? Isn't there? Is that something else?
That's a different story that a lot of people don't like, and
Okay.
I also didn't play the remastered version. I just played the old version, which had the DLC in it, which was kind of cool, so I could play the
Nice.
DLC. But the American, is it American Nightmare? Is that what it's
I think
called?
so. Yeah.
It's apparently more action focused, like
Mm.
more of the gameplay aspect of it. Because I would definitely say the first Alan Wake, and I like it. It has that thing where you're going from point A to point B, and it feels like this is the reason you're doing gameplay is just to get to the next story beat. Like it doesn't feel like you're accomplishing something necessarily, which I
Yeah.
think is like an older game thing, but also it can be also a newer game thing. And I don't think it's necessarily a problem because the atmosphere and the story and the characters of Alan Wake are really good. Like they're really, the story is carrying that thing, and the
Hmm.
gameplay is pretty good too. The flashlight shoot stuff, like gameplay. Um, it's really funny when things start getting thrown at you, like inanimate objects come to life. It's really funny because you're like, what? I wasn't ready for a car to get thrown at me. There's a boss. It's just a bulldozer. That's just the boss. Is a
The boss
bulldozer.
is just a bulldozer.
It's a
Okay.
bulldozer that came to life with no one driving it. And then also the whole, because I didn't know anything about the story, the whole first 3 episodes, you're like, is he crazy? Like, is this him just being crazy? Is there nothing scary going on? Like, and you don't really know. And then, yeah. So I'm excited. I'm doing this so I can play Control, And
Mm-hmm.
then after I play Control, then I'm going to go ahead and play the Alan Wake 2.
Yeah.
And then I guess Quantum Break is also connected.
Yeah, Quantum Break is in there, and Max Payne is also tangentially related. I think technically it's in another universe, but there's a Max Payne character named something else in the Alan Wake universe. So they're like it's like a copyright issue. It's like they would be connected if like Rockstar didn't own Max
Max Payne.
Payne. Yeah.
And I think that's funny too, because I was a huge Max Payne fan. I think I talked about this on the podcast before, where I played all the Max Payne games, all three of them, and I beat all three of them. And if I'd have just known Alan Wake was like the same kind of feel, I probably would have played it when it came out if I'd have known that. But I had no idea. And it was a spooky, scary game. And as people are going to see later this week, I don't do well with spooky, scary games.
Mm-hmm.
But I got through Alan Wake because I had a gun, and that makes you feel safer
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. So
A
little bit. But the other game I've been playing this week, and I've had you watch me play it, is we started Metal Gear Solid.
Twin Snakes.
Twin Snakes. So I am playing Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. Tyler is watching me play it. We're doing it together. We're not recording it. This is just friend time. This is just friendly time. But maybe we will record it in the future. I don't know. It's good though. I'm blown away at how ridiculous the story is, and like the way the characters interact with each other and how silly it is. It's perfect.
It's so seriously silly that like you just it is silly, but if you just take it seriously as if these things aren't silly, you have a great time because the story actually is pretty good. We'll get into like it gets real like deep in the end of the first Metal Gear, and then the second one is just like bonkers weird, and then the third one is a little bit more grounded, and then the fourth one is just cathartic, ties it all together.
Mm-hmm. I think what's going to happen too is I'm going to play these games, and then I'm going to go back and listen to our episodes and skip over the times that I talk and just listen to you, and then know more context going in about what's going on. But there's a lot of things that are fun with watching it. With like playing with you, it's fun because I'm like, look at that naked guy, and you're like, that naked guy's actually going to be important. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, that dude's he's got a pretty big role later on. We got to wait about 20 years, but he's going to have a pretty big role.
And then I also was like, Tyler, why is it when I keep meeting all these people, they just die instantly? And then the character right afterward makes a reference being like, the last two people I've met have died instantly. It's like, what? It's like he knows. And like what a Metal Gear is. And there's also like, I was doing the thing to you though that we talked about with like your mom watches a movie with you in a movie theater and they're like, who's that? I was doing that to you.
Yeah. Who's that guy? It's like the first scene of the movie and like door opens, somebody walks through and you're like, who's that guy? Well, do we know who they are? And it's like, no, the movie just started. Just watch.
Like, just watch and wait. And you're like, oh, okay. I was doing that to you. I was full blown momming Tyler during the movie. And I say movie because that thing's mostly cutscenes and I kind of love that part.
And it doesn't get any better.
So all the games are like that?
All of them are like this. Yeah.
I kind of think it's funny though too, because I know once I get to a cutscene, I have like a moment to just like chill and relax and enjoy the story in a way. Mm-hmm. It's like a nice little palate cleanser in between.
Yep. And you just sneak your way to the next boss. You fight the boss. They're all weird, and then you sneak your way to the next boss and watch cutscenes.
First boss will always be the best for me. The guy that just flipped his gun around like for 30 straight seconds, and every time I thought it was over, he just kept flipping it. And then I was like, dude, when are we stopping here? And then finally he was like, a Colt 45 is the best gun ever made. Like, and then I end up doing this boss fight where I just chase him around a square hallway, just trying to shoot him in the head over and over again. And I just do that for like 10 minutes. Man. I'm glad that you're playing it with me though, because I would never figure out some stuff if I didn't have you there with me, because it is not intuitive at all. In any way,
it gets a little better, but not a lot better.
Really, like even though the later games probably are like
four is fine. 4 feels very much like a modern game. 3 is the same as 1 and 2, but it just a little more polished in all ways.
Well, 3 is gonna have the remake too, so we're gonna play the remake.
True. Yeah,
like, I told you, I was like, we're gonna wait for that remake to come out. We're just gonna play.
Yeah,
that
I mean, if it's not out yet by the time you get to it, you should just play the original because you'll want to play the remake too, and then you'll have all the context you need to play the remake. So that when they make little references, you'll get them.
Oh, good point.
I think it's worth playing the original.
It was so fun, man. I can't wait to play that again. Maybe we'll do some more later today. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe
a good time. But yeah, so this is our Halloween episode. Do you feel like you were properly spooked and scared, Tyler?
I am, especially because we will put that video out later this week as well. So you get 2 content drops this week. Whoa.
2 content drops. That one's just going to be on YouTube though, because it really depends on the video. Like if I just put the audio out of that would be very boring. So this is the podcast form, and then you're gonna get a YouTube video on Wednesday of this week where I drop the actual like episode of us playing the game together, including the first 6 minutes where we had technical difficulties and had to start again. So it's gonna be in there as well. But we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I think that's it. So if you want to support us, go to codexpodcast.net. That's our website. It's got all our links on there. Send us an email, codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can find our Discord online. You can go ahead and look at our Trello boards on our website.
I keep it up to date.
I am too. I'm really into it. I've been really keeping it up to date. Oh, I also played Katamari. Did I talk about that?
Oh yeah.
Late one night, you and I were hanging out, and I was like, I need a game to play. Like, you should try Katamari. It's on Game Pass. And I did. And I'm like, this is the most ridiculous, absurd game. And that's great.
You can play it for like half an hour. You're like, yeah, I get it. It is really satisfying by the time you get to the end because you're rolling up like just whole islands. I love it. It gets huge.
I love it. It was just a fun, weird vibe of a game. And that was great. So, all right. But yeah, next week we'll be back with another episode. And with that, Tyler, would you like to say goodbye to everybody?
Goodbye, everybody.